This is Robert Fabian, and I'm one to address the dress code and the challenges that we have with it. And the issue is, I really believe that the uniforms can make a difference, and I'd like for us to look at some situations and some data to back up why uniforms can make a difference overall and how a school can function. And the biggest issue, it seems like the drawback, though, is with the kids. And their issue is that, of course, they think everybody's going to laugh at them if they wear uniforms. Of course, this cartoon here pokes a little bit of fun at them. While true, I might be the one over on the right side laughing at the kids. In reality, though, the kids in this cartoon still are wearing a uniform. It's just that it's the uniform that society wants them to wear, or they feel that society wants them to wear. So they will wear the baggy pants and the hats around backwards, and the girls, of course, would wear some of the provocative clothing that they would see on TV. So the issue is, though, uniforms happen, just that who's going to decide what the uniform is going to look like. We have an issue at school, though, and the issue is really dress code is subjective to enforcement. If you're trying to enforce a code at school, it needs to be consistent. And to make sure you stand up in case somebody decides they want to sue you, you want to make sure you're consistent. And one of the issues with many dress codes where they're written is that they're not very consistent. What might be an issue for dress in one staff person might not even be noticed by another person. They don't even try to enforce it. It seems also that students push the limits to see what they can get away with. You know, what's available at the local store is what they feel like they need to wear to school. Just because it's the latest fashion doesn't mean it's good taste, or that our students need to be wearing it. But yet there it is, and they beg their parents to buy the clothes because they say everybody else is wearing it. And whereas if parents said no, then of course then we wouldn't have this issue. Or if the school said no, we wouldn't have this issue. But the issue, or the stores didn't have it, we wouldn't have this issue. But there it is, and this is what people feel they need to wear to show their own individual taste and their own individuality. So this seems to be a constant battle for the schools because these pressures from society for our students to dress in different ways that may or may not be a part of the school dress code. So the issue is, why would we even want to use school uniforms to start with? Well, I'd like to base it on some research to show why this would be a good way of addressing some of our issues here. This University of Houston study was done back in 2009, and one of the things they showed was to reduce the victimization of students. If nobody stood out, the bullying was cut down. And I know that we want to try to cut down on bullying, and so if we're able to do that, one way to do that is, of course, by having school uniforms. The second point I thought was kind of interesting to show that it allows for administrators to differentiate students from trespassers. If you're not in uniform, you probably don't belong there. So if you don't belong there, then we probably need to either escort you to the office or escort you off the premises. So that's a good way of being able to know who's supposed to be there, especially in the high schools when high schoolers are much older and able to dress as adults more and other adults and other students and peers come in to the schools. A third one was to encourage positive attitudes in students. Those who have low self-esteem, when they're actually dressed very much like everybody else, or those who are poor, who end up dressing just like everybody else, had a positive outlook on life about who they were, and they fit in with everybody else. It also helped reduce bad behavior. Nobody stood out. There's no reason to get in trouble for just to get noticed. And also, it improved attendance, and that was the one that surprised me, that people didn't worry about what to wear, and nobody worried about trying to stand out, so they just went ahead and went to school anyway. University of Nevada study had this one here. They talked to some students, and they asked them to rate how they felt about these different pieces to their school uniform policy. one of the things that they talked about was that the kids still felt like they had an identity when they wore their uniform. 54% here at this middle school they studied. Also, the family likes that I wear a uniform to school. It means that the family really doesn't have to fight them at school, at store, but also it's pretty consistent about what the kid's going to have to wear one day to the next. So there's no drama at home having to discuss what they're going to wear and what they can't wear. It also, that many people perceive that they save money on clothes. Well, if you're buying what some schools do with khakis and a polo shirt, those are pretty basic things, and that is a uniform, and those are are not very expensive, so that people can actually save some money instead of going out for all the latest fashions. Some of the other things the students said, they don't worry about how it look. They worry about how they look and also how they look. So if that's a positive, then people can really focus more on what they're really there for, is to get an education. And also, one of the other things is that there's less gang activity at school. If you can't stand out in your colors or whichever way you might want to identify as a gang, then you're less likely to provide gang activity at school. Also in the studies, they compared the statistics from the prior year, and referrals were reduced about 10% the first year that the uniform policy was implemented, so that the students spent less time in the principal's office and more time in classroom. So that sounds like a positive impact already. Also, additionally, school police data showed a 63% reduction in police log reports during the first year. That means that the police wasn't there, and the resource officer actually had a chance to do some other types of things instead of worrying about trying to figure out how to report the crimes that were committed at school. Other things that were, there's also no reports of gang-related activities, a decrease there, and student fights and gang-related activities. Also, reduction in graffiti, reduction in property damage, reduction in battery, and also in administrative assist. So across the board, it seems like the behaviors that we want to limit and the things that we want to try to get rid of were reduced just even in the first year of having a uniform policy. And the researcher from the University of Nevada stated this thing here. It says, if a simple change in attire can positively influence more than 30% or even 25% of the school's student population, then perhaps administrators and teachers and students and the community members find worth the effort. And if that, even if it just helps that many out, and by helping others be positive and also helping reduce some of the things we're trying to eliminate, maybe the enforcement of school uniforms would be the thing that most schools need to look at. What's the upside? Well, the stress that individuality and self-expression are not determined by designer clothing or the latest fashion fad. That means people really have to get to know you for who you are. They have to judge you. They have to force to judge. They're forced to judge you by your personality and your character, not by the quality or the style of your clothes or whether or not you have money enough to buy all those clothes. It's about who you are and how you interact with other people, which means that it would force a student to also have to do that for themselves too. Also, another upside is that administrators and teachers will have an easier time determining if a student is violating the dress code policy. If a student is not uniform, then there is no doubt that the student has broken the policy. That goes right back to consistency. And if it's consistent and everybody is able to enforce it, then it will stand up, and other people will have to fall in line with the code there. Now, there are some downsides. I have to admit that. But I want us to weigh those compared to a lot of the positives. Some people will have issues of cost, and I understand that. It depends on the style of uniform that people are asking for. Also, there's issues of conformity. Do we really want to have everybody looking the same all the way across the board? And does that bring up issues of something down the road where people will be told they have to be conformist all the way, even as an adult? Also, it prevents self-expression. While that is a right that we like to be able to express, be able to do, but the issue is that not everything needs to be expressed. And I think that's one of the things we have explored here in our laws. Also, people will have to learn how to coexist with people whose tastes and opinions are different. I think all these are legitimate, but these are ones you have to weigh with the upsides, and whether or not education can be improved, student performance can be improved with this advent of school uniforms in each school. Thank you very much for listening today. Hope you guys have a good time.